All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to the next topic here on this edition of the Rock News Roundup podcast. And that is the members of Jane's Addiction are back in the studio recording new music, but this time it's without their frontman, Perry Farrell. Ultimate Classic Rock is reporting that Dave Navarro, Eric Avery, and Stephen Perkins are in the studio without the Jane's Addiction frontman, Perry Farrell. There's some footage that has been seen on Instagram. We've seen footage of them in the studio working on some stuff. Their first studio materials, first recordings since Jane's Addiction released a pair of tracks in 2024. And of course, this is coming on the heels of a lot of drama in the world of Jane's Addiction. They had a very short-lived reunion in 2024, which ended with a huge altercation on stage between Perry Farrell and Dave Navarro. It looked like Perry Farrell was getting very angry in that situation. He had to be dragged off stage. Dave Navarro looked to be very shocked by that whole incident. So this is on the heels of that very short-lived altercation. After that, both parties, Perry Farrell and the other members of Jane's, released some statements, apologizing, saying that the partnership wasn't really going to work at this point in time. And I was listening to this clip on Instagram. It actually sounds pretty cool. From what I hear, it sounds like a more kind of groovy, trippy side of things, more so than the big rock side sound of Jane's Addiction, but without Perry Farrell. Like, is it a Jane's Addiction record? Is it a something else without Perry Farrell record? We don't really know. And that is the thing. We don't really know where Jane's Addiction goes from here, because a continuing Jane's Addiction reunion seems kind of unlikely unless these guys can really figure things out. Not that we know all the aspects of what goes on behind the scenes of a band. It's like any other relationship. That is their own business. That's their own thing, really, to work out. But it seems like something happening with Jane's Addiction, at least this year, is very, very unlikely. Those new songs that we heard back in 2024 were okay. And I'm not a huge Jane's Addiction fan as it is. I like what I've heard of Jane's Addiction, but they're definitely not one of my go-to bands from that 80s and 90s rock era. They're not a Nirvana or a Pearl Jam or a Chili Peppers. At least for me. I know for a lot of other rock fans, they are a lot more important. But for me, I just really not sure what the interest would be for a lot of fans out there without this whole lineup together. I think that was what the interest was, and that was what really drew people to this reunion, is that you had the four original members of Jane's Addiction back together. And it just doesn't feel like it's not something that people really need or are calling for after what happened at the end of 2024. And for me, Jane's Addiction, they're not really a band that have a lot of hits, like a ton of hits, that I would think that they are one of those essential bands from the 90s. Of course, Jane says, I had a band back in 2002, 2003, a cover band where one of the songs that we played was Jane Says, if a cover band could ever have a one-hit wonder, if there was a cover band that could ever be a one-hit wonder, that's what we were, because we would play so many songs in a set every given night, and then everybody would just say, play Jane Says. For some reason, they loved our cover of that Jane's Addiction song, which I love it. It's a great song. Got kind of annoying trying to cover it all the time. Been Caught Stealing, another great Jane's Addiction song that I love. And then one of the other Jane's Addiction songs that I really do love, and maybe this is cheesy, maybe this isn't really cool of me to say, but Superhero, which came out in 2005 or 2004 on their reunion record, which came out back then. That's 20 years old. And that ended up being the theme song for the television show Entourage. So that just goes to show you kind of what my interest level is for Jane's Addiction, which I do enjoy them. I do have a lot of respect for them. I think they're great musicians. Just like, a reunion didn't really do much for me. Excited that they're back in the studio, because that's what musicians do, right? I know a lot of people say, oh, well, if you're not going to do Jane's Addiction, if you're not going to do something where it's a reunion, or if it's not nostalgia driven, then why are you still making music? But that is the thing, as musicians, we continue to make music no matter what. The drive to make art, the drive to make music is there no matter what brand it has on it, no matter what what fans are necessarily asking for at the time. So it's good that Jane's Addiction is staying busy. I do really think that they should still continue making music, maybe get a new frontman. I don't think fans would be as upset maybe if they got somebody else to sing instead of Perry Farrell. Maybe call it something else. Maybe don't call it Jane's Addiction. But I think another point that I wanted to make about this is that it kind of shows the downside to all the reunions that are happening in the world of rock and the music world in general. That's the thing in the 21st century. If you have a recognizable brand, if you have a recognizable IP, if you have a recognizable name as a musician, you have to follow that, whether it be more nostalgia or be more forward looking. Like bands are always trying to recapture that magic, trying to go out there and find an audience. Sometimes they fall short and then the fans end up disappointed. So I'm sure there was a lot of Jane's Addiction fans who got very excited about this reunion. We're very excited to go see them live, and then that all fell apart. And then who knows how much enthusiasm there is for a Jane's Addiction reunion or more music from these guys in the near future. But that could just be me. I'm on my own on this, maybe. I'm not sure, but you guys can let me know in the comments. What do you think about this, about Jane's Addiction recording new music without Perry Farrell? Is that like sacrilege that they're doing this without him? Does it make sense that they're going to continue without Perry Farrell and just make music because that's what musicians do? They make music. And how excited are you for any potential new music coming out of this Jane's Addiction camp? You can let me know in the comments below.